Thanks for joining me again. This week marked the end of the 2025 General Assembly session. I applaud the work done by the lawmakers in Annapolis. State lawmakers took on a $3 billion deficit and produced a balanced budget. This was a very tough session with many difficult choices. I want to thank the work of the Montgomery County delegation and all the state leaders who took on this challenge. Our legislators worked hard, and putting together a solution was complex. One thing Governor Westmore made clear from the beginning was that this hole was not going to be filled by taxing the middle class, and I support the introduction of progressivity into the tax structure. I appreciate this approach because I also believe that we shouldn't start out by figuring out how to tax working families to pay more. It is important to look at every available way to make up the funding gap. Creating two new income tax brackets for higher-end earners who have the means to share more is the right way to approach tax collection. While we are still unpacking the impacts from the legislation and decision made by the General Assembly, we saw a lot of progress and good news for residents in Maryland, such as improving public safety, healthcare access, as well as lower prescription drug costs. One of several public safety wins was a bill that better protects all of us on the road. In 2023, Montgomery County Police Department Sergeant Pat Koepp was out of his car on 270 trying to install a stop strip in order to stop a speeding driver when he was targeted by that driver and hit by his vehicle. Sergeant Koepp was seriously injured in the accident, wound up losing both his legs, but has worked hard to return to the police department. Sergeant Koepp has split his time between Annapolis and the courtroom because of how important this legislation is. The driver who hit him should not have even been on the road that night because he was a repeat offender. Our police had witnessed this person driving wildly fast and trying to bait them into a chase many times. But our police do not do high-speed chases because of larger public safety concerns. He should have been put in jail a long time ago, and hopefully now he will be. And there was great news for Marylanders when it comes to improving health care. New legislation aims to lower prescription drug costs by expanding the authority of the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. This is a measure I've been behind for a long time. We've got to stop the prescription drug companies from putting our residents between a rock and a hard place. I'm not the only person who's known people who are forced to sacrifice food for their families in order to keep up with out-of-control drug pricing. What makes the situation infuriating is that when you realize you can go to Canada, Mexico, Colombia, or Europe and buy the same name brand drugs for less than you would pay here in the United States. There's no rational reason for the price disparities other than that our federal government refuses to protect us from price gouging. The state also extended a successful health insurance subsidy program for young adults and is preparing for a potential federal health care change by establishing a state subsidy program and reinstating a commission to assess impacts. Despite budget constraints, the legislature resisted major cuts to the Vital Medicaid program. My guest for this week's media briefing was Vinnie DeMarco, the president of Maryland Healthcare for All Coalition. I've known him quite a while. This week he published an op-ed in Maryland Matters called A Tale of Two Governors, and I encourage you to read it. In this op-ed, Vinnie highlights the differences between the Moore and Hogan administrations in their approach and prioritization of health issues. He also talked about how these changes will help struggling people with challenges brought on by the current healthcare system.
We hear stories of people like Erica Miller, who was diagnosed with ADHD and was on a drug that was helping her. Then she got a divorce, lost her insurance, and her ability to live her life was changed, so she was fired because she couldn't afford the drugs that she needed. And she testified in the legislature, and people like her have made this happen, and people like you, County Executive, because the people of Maryland demand a prescription drug affordability board with full authority.
This week, in partnership with the state of Maryland and the town of Poolesville, we announced a financial incentive package to get White's Ferry back up and running. It's not like we haven't talked about money before, but we've put together a package and we're putting it on the table. We're offering a $3 million incentive to the Maryland and Virginia landowners who have been unable to reach an agreement with each other on how to restart the ferry since the Virginia property owner blocked the ferry's landing over 4 years ago. Governor Wes Moore recommended state aid of $1.5 million, which the Assembly approved as part of next year's budget. The rest of that money will come from the county's capital improvement amendment that I put forward to the county council and they supported. The package also includes a pledge of cooperation and financial engagement by the town of Poolesville. The money's meant to resolve issues over property rights and can be used to purchase equipment or make other capital investments in the ferry. Money will only be distributed after Potomac Crossing LLC, the Maryland property owner, and Rockland Farm LLC, the Virginia owner, reach a binding agreement, which must happen by July 1st, 2026. A reopening date for the ferry must be established before the $3 million is given to the ferry partners through a grant agreement. Our county and members of our Maryland delegation have worked hard over the last 4 years to bring these two parties together. I specifically want to thank Delegate David Frazier-Odago for all his work on this matter. A final agreement will require both sides to come to the table with an open mind and a willingness to be flexible. The town of Poolesville has suffered an economic downturn since the ferry closed in 2020. Reopening the ferry will positively impact local businesses, providing economic stability and improving the quality of life for many residents. And it will save tens of thousands of miles of wasteful travel, having to go all the way down to the American Legion Bridge or up to Point of Rocks in order to get on the other side of the Potomac. When it was operational, the ferry carried nearly 800 daily users between Maryland and Virginia, and its history goes back to 1786. I urge the private parties to meet soon and for both to have an open mind and to be flexible. This offering is about giving the private parties one last opportunity to find a solution. We can't force an agreement, but we're putting real money on the table to help make one possible. If this doesn't get resolved now, it won't be for lack of effort from the county, the state, or from the town of Poolesville. Last Saturday, I joined tens of thousands of people nationwide taking part in the Hands Off rally. I was at the National Mall wearing my favorite t-shirt, and there were also rallies at Olney, Garrett Park, and Leisure World, not to mention hundreds of rallies nationwide. People turned out to express tremendous concern about the ongoing actions of the Trump and Musk administration. Last week was one of the worst weeks in this county's history, with more than 2,200 jobs lost through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services alone. The tariff plan has made things worse, and the financial markets are falling rapidly. People have lost jobs, and now many are worried about the security of their retirement. Saturday's protests were important for people to speak up in defense of democracy, due process, and much more, and to show how those of us are outraged over the reckless and chaotic policies, and we're not alone. I joined 300 building owners, property managers, developers, energy contractors, and sustainability professionals for the 12th Annual Energy Summit in Silver Spring. Our Energy Summit gives both newcomers and experienced leaders in the commercial building sector a chance to explore the latest advancements in energy efficiency, sustainable practices, and emerging technologies. This is an important platform for reaching our community and an essential tool we've used to lower carbon emissions in Montgomery County. This year, the Energy Summit was sold out, highlighting the importance of helping company leaders enhance their building's energy future and meet compliance requirements. I want to thank our Department of Environmental Protection, headed by John Monger, as well as the work of our climate action teams being led by our Chief Climate Change Officer, Sarah Kogel-Smucker. The theme of this year's Energy Summit is Beyond Benchmarking, Navigating Energy Performance. The gathering focused largely on our BEPS legislation, which is the Building Energy Performance Standards, and regulations on implementing them with our business and nonprofit communities. This week, we received good news on BEPS. The Maryland General Assembly passed House Bill 49, Building Energy Performance Standards alterations, and this bill will revise the state's Building Energy Performance Standards law in a few important ways that help us. Maryland's Department of Environment is now required to certify Montgomery County's BEPS program and to waive the requirement for building coverage in Montgomery County to comply with statewide program. This makes it official that building owners only need to comply with one program, our BEPS program, and I'm sure that's one less headache that our builders want to have to deal with. One of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases is our buildings. And if we are to hit our goal of 100% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2035, These legislative and regulatory efforts are critical. Beyond our buildings, we're committed to helping businesses and residents be more sustainable in their waste practices. On Friday, we announced the expansion of our recycling program to include electronics and batteries. Residents will soon be receiving a mailer on when collections will begin in their neighborhood. We have a lot more Earth Month events and activities in the upcoming weeks, concluding with our 10th anniversary celebration of Tree Montgomery on April 25th and our annual Green Fest gathering at the Marion Fryer Plaza. We're living in a time when our federal government is working under the theme of energy dominance. They are swiftly implementing plans to sell federal lands for coal mining, oil drilling, and natural gas exploration. This is pretty bonkers. And it's baffling that after the week we saw these horrific storms and flooding tear through the Ohio Valley, killing and impacting Americans residing in the reddest of red jurisdictions, yet every Republican, from President Trump to the county commissioner, are scared to utter the words climate change. Last month, when we presented a climate action plan update at Walt Whitman High School, I was inspired by the conversations and questions from the young adults who were there. The work we do in this climate, energy, and environmental space is about them. The war on climate change is just another part of the current war on science being waged by this administration, an existential threat to our existence that too many people are deliberately ignoring. Another way to improve sustainability at home or at work is to limit what we throw away. Montgomery County Food Waste Prevention Week is in place to help spread awareness and to help the public identify ways to limit the amount of trash disposal and what's being collected. We celebrate our local leaders, nonprofit partners, and community advocates who work on our behalf to educate the public. They are behind many of the activities that promote environmental standards. I'm encouraged by the number of community partners who share our mission to reduce, recover, and recycle wasted food. And here are some tips that you can use to employ to reduce food waste. You can plan your meals to avoid over-preparing. You can use durable, reusable dishware and not disposable plates and cutlery. You can recycle all your bottles, jars, cans, and containers, and we'll happily take them. You can mind the time of year. Food waste tends to spike around holidays, so be conscious about what you're cooking and how much. You can consider composting food scraps, and the county has help for that. The Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection, Recycling and Resource Management estimates that approximately 97,000 tons of food waste or food scraps were discarded in Montgomery County in 2023. You can find more information about composting and how to dispose of composted materials that you collect at home or at work by going to the DEP website, or you can simply call 311 and ask for how you may connect. I've heard the compliments thanking Montgomery County's leadership in addressing waste food and food insecurity, but it's not our credit to take. I thank the people who've helped execute the plan and wisely used limited resources that we can share to ensure we are creating a greener future today. Last week, I urged the County Council to hold off voting on Bill 2-25, Payment in lieu of taxes legislation, or pilot legislation, that applies to office-to-residential conversion properties. The Zoning Text Amendment, or ZTA, that passed was a part of More Housing Now, an initiative introduced a few months ago. They didn't wait, and they went forward on Tuesday. And this council moved forward with foregoing potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in property taxes over the next 20 years that could be used to address our county's many needs. While I do not have the power to veto a zoning text amendment, I can veto the pilot legislation. I'm waiting for this legislation to arrive on my desk. The zoning text amendment itself is not a big deal. I didn't have a problem with it. We should make the process simple and direct as we can. The county approved 2 such projects already without any legislation. And they did that without any massive tax giveaways. In fact, they did it without any tax giveaways. Developers have already shown interest in converting empty office buildings into residential properties, including a big project in Silver Spring. So giving them a tax break to do so opens up a can of worms that could jeopardize county revenues for years to come. This is another example of the county giving a free ride to developers, which will reduce county revenue by tens of millions of dollars a year if this happens at any scale, because it exempts them from property taxes for 20 years. And it's on a by right basis. It requires absolutely no proof that the money they're getting is needed in order to make a deal feasible. Every dime foregone from the developers is money that ultimately will come out of our residents' pockets. Our focus should be on doing the most we can as the government to advance affordable housing options in Montgomery County, not creating more corporate welfare opportunities that won't do enough to bring down the cost of housing in our community. I want to be clear, this legislation provides about the same amount of affordable housing that we would otherwise get, and interestingly, none of the so-called missing middle housing, which has been much of the talk of the council over the last few weeks. I anticipate having a lot more to say about this, so stand by for further analysis in the coming days. For the first time in the county's history, public health workers were recognized during Dr. Alder J. Tillman National Public Health Week Symposium. Dr. Tillman was the former director of the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. The gathering was meant to spotlight the vital role of public health professionals, particularly their efforts during COVID-19, and highlight the 2025 theme, which is Success in Community. It starts here. That theme reminds us to work together to help everyone understand the importance of preventative measures. The 2025 County Health Rankings found that Montgomery County is one of the healthiest places to live in the state and nation. We should acknowledge that we do have areas that we can improve, but our county health officials, hospitals, community-based nonprofit health providers, and other stakeholders continue to prioritize improving health outcomes. Too often the work done by our health professionals goes under the radar. During the pandemic, one positive aspect of such a dismal time was seeing our community rally behind these hardworking professionals who were up to the task despite high stress levels, uncertain conditions, and watching so many people die. And I'd add to that the fact that they went in every day and put themselves at risk, and particularly in the beginning of all this, when we didn't have masks, and when we got masks, the first masks weren't even terribly effective, and we were also having homemade masks. So they were in there doing this work and putting themselves at risk, and I think all of us owe them a debt of appreciation for what they did. I hope you realize that our community would have fared far worse had it not been for the dedication to patient care. Montgomery County is committed to health equity, making sure everyone has access to the same level of care, no matter their economic status or religious beliefs. We have several community initiatives that focus on reaching out to specific segments of our population, such as Latinos, African Americans, and Asian Pacific Islanders. Every week, Montgomery County's public health leaders join me on my weekly media briefing. They work tirelessly to help protect our community and protect it from communicable diseases and chronic ailments. They help seniors, expectant mothers, families in need, and people without shelter or health care coverage. Their work helps lift our community, and I couldn't be prouder of the work they do on behalf of Montgomery County residents. Finally, I also want to acknowledge the hard work done by our Department of Public Libraries during Library Worker Week. Our dedicated library media specialists encourage a love of reading and help transform lives to strengthen our communities. Libraries offer something for everyone, and that is reflected in the new campaign we asked the public to participate in. Our workers are getting some love in the form of video messages from the community detailing why they love the library. I shared a video as well, and I hope it reflects how much I appreciate the work they do on early learning and engaging our community. I encourage everyone to visit montgomerycountymd.gov/library to explore our resources, learn about our community events, or participate in reading challenges. So that's a wrap for today. I hope you all hanging in there. I know these are difficult times. Hope you have a great weekend, and I'll be back again next week. Take care.